Welcome back to the Echoes of Ihsan podcast. Today we're diving into Sunan Abu Dawud Hadith, Book 28. It's called Combing the Hair. You've
Yes.
sent us quite a selection from this book, and
Mhm.
it looks like we're going to be exploring the Prophet Muhammad's, peace be upon him,
Right.
teachings on personal grooming and adornment.
That's right. These hadiths, they cover a wide range of topics, from hair care and perfume to dyeing and jewelry. It's going to be fascinating to kind of uncover what they reveal about, the Islamic perspective on these matters.
Okay, let's unpack this. The first hadith that kind of caught my eye was number 4147.
Okay.
It says the Prophet advised combing hair every other day. I'm curious about that specific frequency. Why every other day? What's the reasoning behind that?
Well, I think what's fascinating here is that it speaks to a broader principle that we see throughout Islamic teachings, the idea of balance and moderation. It's not about, going to extremes, but rather finding that middle ground.
I see. So it's not just about hair care. It's about finding that sweet spot in all aspects of life.
Exactly. And it makes me think about the concept of Ihsan, which is often translated as striving for excellence or perfection. It's about doing things to the best of our ability, even in seemingly mundane acts like combing our hair.
Okay, so even something as simple as combing our hair can be an act of worship or striving for excellence if done with the right intention.
Precisely. It's about bringing mindfulness and intention to every aspect of our lives, even those that might seem insignificant.
Okay, that's a really interesting perspective. But then we have Hadith 4148, which tells the story of Abdullah ibn Buraida.
Okay.
He was serving as a governor in Egypt, and someone criticized his appearance, saying his hair was disheveled and he wasn't wearing shoes.
Yeah. And his response is key. He explained that the prophet discouraged excessive luxury and indulgence in worldly possessions. This suggests that even in positions of authority, simplicity and humility are valued.
I see. So it's not about completely neglecting our appearance, but rather about finding that balance between taking care of ourselves and avoiding extravagance or showing off.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that true beauty and worth come from within, from our character and actions rather than from outward appearances.
That message really resonates with me. And it seems to connect to Hadith 4149, where the prophet states that wearing old clothes is a part of faith.
Absolutely. This reinforces the idea that outward appearances shouldn't be a source of pride or vanity. True faith is reflected in inner character and actions, not expensive clothing or a perfectly coiffed hairstyle.
This is making me think about the pressure we face today to constantly keep up with trends, buy the latest clothes, and look a certain way. It seems like these hadiths are encouraging a different approach.
You're absolutely right. These teachings offer a counter-narrative to the consumerist messages we're bombarded with daily. They remind us that our worth isn't tied to our possessions or how we look.
So what we're seeing here is a theme of taking care of our appearance, but with a focus on simplicity, moderation, and avoiding excess.
Precisely. It's about honoring our bodies as gifts from God, but not getting caught up in superficiality or vanity.
It's like the prophet is guiding us towards an understanding of beauty that goes beyond the surface and touches on something deeper and more meaningful.
Exactly. It's about aligning our outward appearance with our inner values.
This brings us to a point where things get really interesting, the guidance on dyeing and adornment. It seems like there are distinct differences in the teachings for men and women.
That's an important observation. For example, Hadiths 4152 through 4154, they talk about henna for women. We see Aisha, may God be pleased with her, saying there's no harm in using henna, but she personally doesn't like the smell. And she actually associated that with the Prophet's preference.
So there's room for personal preference within the guidelines. Does this mean we can pick and choose which teachings to follow based on our likes and dislikes?
Hmm. That's a thought-provoking question. I think it's important to remember that these teachings are meant to guide us towards what's best for us, both in this life and in the hereafter. While personal preferences are acknowledged, there are also limits to how much we can deviate from the established guidelines.
So how do we find that balance between personal preference and adhering to the teachings? Where do we draw the line?
That's a question that requires careful consideration and perhaps even seeking guidance from scholars who have deeper knowledge of these matters. It's about understanding the spirit of the teachings and applying them thoughtfully in our lives, taking into account both the context and the underlying principles.
I'm starting to realize there's a lot more to these teachings than meets the eye. It's not just about following rules blindly, but about understanding the wisdom behind them and navigating the nuances.
Absolutely. And it's about recognizing that these teachings were revealed in a specific time and place. And while the core principles remain timeless, their application may require some adaptation and interpretation in different contexts.
Okay, that makes sense. But there's another hadith I'm finding a bit puzzling. Hadith 4153 tells the story of Hind, the daughter of Utbah.
Okay.
When she came to pledge allegiance to the Prophet, he asked her to change the appearance of her hands before accepting her pledge. This is where I feel like we need to delve into the cultural context.
You're right. Cultural context is crucial here. To fully understand this hadith, we need to consider the social practices and norms of that time and place. Perhaps her hands were stained in a way that was considered inappropriate for a follower of Islam.
So it's possible that certain beauty practices that were acceptable back then might not be aligned with Islamic teachings today.
That's a possibility worth considering.
Uh-huh.
Further research into the historical context would be illuminating, but it's a reminder that we need to be mindful of not just our personal preferences, but also the potential social and cultural implications of our choices.
That's a really good point. It's like we're being encouraged to think critically and not just blindly follow traditions without understanding their origins and significance.
I completely agree. It's about engaging with these teachings actively and thoughtfully.
Now, I'm really curious about the guidance for men on dyeing their hair. Hadiths 4191 to 4193 seem to encourage men to dye their hair, but specifically avoiding black.
Yeah, that's another fascinating distinction. The Prophet even recommended henna and katam for men.
Okay.
This contrasts with the emphasis on henna for women.
Why do you think there's such a difference in the guidance for men and women when it comes to dyeing?
It makes you wonder what symbolic meanings or social practices were associated with, different colors and dyes back then.
Mhm.
Perhaps black dye was associated with something that was considered undesirable for men, while other colors were seen as more appropriate.
I see. So it's not just about the act of dyeing itself, but about the cultural and social connotations attached to certain colors and practices.
Exactly. It highlights the importance of understanding the context and the underlying reasons behind these teachings.
This is making me realize how much I still have to learn. It's not just about what the hadith says on the surface, but about digging deeper and uncovering those layers of meaning.
I completely agree. It's a journey of discovery and a process of continuous learning.
And speaking of contrasting guidance, the hadiths on adding false hair are very strong, almost a complete condemnation for women.
Absolutely. Hadiths 4155 through 4159 use incredibly strong language. The Prophet, peace be upon him, curses both of the woman who adds false hair and the one who requests it.
Wow.
He even compares it to the practices that led to the downfall of the Israelites, which suggests, like, a serious transgression.
Why do you think this practice is condemned so strongly?
It seems to be rooted in the idea of authenticity and accepting one's natural self.
Right.
The act of adding false hair could be seen as a form of deception, attempting to portray oneself as something one is not.
And the comparison to the Israelites suggests that it goes beyond just a matter of personal preference, right? It hints at a deeper moral or spiritual implication.
Exactly. It raises questions about the importance of honesty and integrity, not just in our outward appearance, but in all aspects of our lives.
But then we have Hadith 4159, which distinguishes between adding hair and simply tying it with thread. Why do you think there's this nuance?
This distinction suggests that the issue isn't simply with altering one's hair, but specifically with adding foreign elements to it.
I see.
Tying one's natural hair with thread could be seen as a way of, like, styling or managing it, while adding hair from another source is viewed as fundamentally changing one's appearance.
So it seems there's a clear line drawn between enhancing what you already have and trying to create something entirely new.
Yes, it's about appreciating the beauty of what God has given us and not trying to artificially alter ourselves to conform to, external standards.
This conversation is making me rethink my entire approach to beauty and self-image. I'm starting to see these hadiths as a guide to finding a more authentic and meaningful way of being.
I'm glad to hear that. I think that's the beauty of these teachings. They challenge us to think critically, to question our assumptions, and to find a path that aligns with our values.
This deep dive is definitely prompting a lot of questions and reflections for me. It's amazing how these seemingly simple teachings about grooming are connected to such profound concepts of authenticity, integrity, and even our relationship with the divine.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the wisdom and depth of these teachings and their ability to guide us in all aspects of our lives.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. Let's take a moment to gather our thoughts and then come back to explore some more of these fascinating hadiths.
Welcome back. I'm ready to kind of delve into those hadiths about mustaches and beards. They seem to be a topic that sparks a lot of discussion and debate even today.
Yeah, me too. And it's fascinating how these seemingly specific instructions about facial hair connect to broader Islamic principles that we've been discussing, like the concept of fitra.
Yes, hadiths 4186 through 4188, they talk about the fitra, which is often translated as, natural disposition or the way God created things.
Okay, so can you explain a bit more about what fitra means in this context? Like, what are we talking about when we say fitra?
Essentially, it emphasizes that our bodies are gifts from God,
Yeah.
and we should care for them in a way that aligns with their natural state. It's about recognizing the, inherent goodness and beauty in how we were created.
So it's not about trying to completely reshape ourselves or go against our natural inclinations, but rather about working with what we've been given.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between, taking care of ourselves and respecting the natural order of things.
I see. So it's like a reminder that we're not supposed to be passive about our bodies, but we're also not supposed to try to become something we're not. We're meant to find that, middle ground.
That's a great way to put it. And it's interesting to see how this concept of fitra is applied to specific grooming practices. Hadith 4286 lists 5 actions as part of this fitra: circumcision, shaving pubic hair, plucking armpit hair, trimming nails, and clipping the mustache.
It's interesting to see how these specific actions are all related to cleanliness and hygiene.
Yeah.
It's like maintaining a balance between letting things grow naturally and keeping them neat and tidy.
Yeah. And it seems to be about removing excess or potentially harmful elements while still respecting the natural form of the body.
This reminds me of what we discussed earlier about combing hair every other day,
Yeah.
finding that middle ground between, neglecting our appearance and going to extremes.
You're absolutely right. There's a consistent theme of balance and moderation running through these teachings.
Okay, so we've talked about fitra and these 5 actions that are considered part of it. Now, let's get to the part about beards and mustaches. Hadith 4187 specifically instructs men to trim their mustaches short and let their beards grow long. I'm curious about the reasoning behind these instructions, why these specific instructions.
That's a great question, and it's one that has sparked a lot of discussion over the centuries. It's important to remember that these teachings were revealed in a specific time and place. The length of a man's beard, for example, might have held different social or cultural meanings in 7th century Arabia.
So it's possible that these instructions were given in response to specific cultural practices or norms of that time.
Yes, it's certainly possible that these instructions were meant to differentiate the Muslims from other groups or to, establish a distinct visual identity. However, it's also important to consider whether there are any timeless principles at play here.
Okay, so it might not just be about blindly following rules that were specific to that time, but about trying to understand the deeper meaning behind those rules and how they might be relevant in our lives today.
Exactly. It's about understanding the spirit of the teachings and adapting them to our own time and place while staying true to the underlying principles.
That makes a lot of sense. So even though we might not necessarily be obligated to follow these specific instructions about beard length today, we can still learn from them and apply the underlying principles to our own lives.
Precisely. For example, the emphasis on letting the beard grow could be seen as a reminder to embrace our masculinity and the natural features that distinguish us as men. Similarly, trimming the mustache short could be interpreted as a symbol of cleanliness and avoiding excess.
It's interesting how these seemingly simple instructions about facial hair can have such deeper symbolic meanings.
And it's a reminder that even seemingly mundane aspects of our appearance can be opportunities for, expressing our faith and our values.
This is making me think about all the different trends we see today, like men shaving their beards completely or, styling them in very particular ways. It makes you wonder how those choices might be influenced by, societal pressures or cultural norms.
That's an excellent point. It's important to be aware of those influences and to make choices that are conscious and intentional rather than simply, conforming to whatever is popular at the moment.
So it's not necessarily about judging others for their grooming choices, but about being mindful of our own choices and making sure they align with our values.
Absolutely. And it's about recognizing that there's a diversity of perspectives and interpretations within Islam, and what might be considered appropriate in one context might not be in another.
This deep dive is really making me um, appreciate the complexity and nuance of these teachings. It's not just about like following a set of rules, but about engaging with them thoughtfully and finding ways to, apply them to our own lives.
I couldn't agree more. It's a lifelong journey of learning and growth.
Okay, before we move on to the next topic, there's something I'm a big curious about. We've talked a lot about avoiding extremes and finding balance, but then we have Hadith 4190, which encourages us not to pluck out gray hairs. This seems to go against the idea of, trimming and keeping things neat and tidy.
You're right. This hadith encourages us not to pluck out gray hairs, promising, spiritual rewards for those who let them grow naturally. It even says that every gray hair earned in Islam will be a source of light on the day of judgment.
Oh, wow. That's a powerful image. But why do you think there's this exception to the general emphasis on, trimming and keeping things like in order?
It's a great question, and it highlights the importance of understanding the nuances of these teachings. In this case, it seems to be about accepting the natural process of aging and recognizing the beauty and wisdom that come with it.
It's like a reminder that our worth isn't tied to our youth or how we look,
Right.
but rather to the experiences we've gained and the lessons we've learned along the way.
Exactly. It's about embracing the journey of life and finding meaning in every stage.
This hadith really stands out as like a countercultural message, especially in a world obsessed with anti-aging products and procedures.
It's a powerful reminder that true beauty transcends physical appearances and that our focus should be on cultivating inner qualities rather than, clinging to fleeting external attributes.
This makes me think about how we often associate like gray hair with decline or weakness, when in reality it can be a symbol of, experience, resilience, and wisdom.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about challenging those societal norms and reframing our perspective on aging.
Okay, so we've explored the teachings on facial hair and gray hair. Now, there's one more hadith that I found particularly intriguing, Hadith 4201, the story of Fatima, the Prophet's daughter, and the bracelets.
Oh, yes. This is a fascinating story that goes beyond, simple instructions about adornment and touches upon deeper themes of worldly possessions, family, and the balance between this life and the hereafter.
It seems to be a story about, like, priorities and what truly matters in life.
Exactly. It invites us to reflect on our attachments and what we value most.
Would you mind recounting the story for our listeners and sharing your insights on its significance?
Of course. The hadith tells us that when the prophet returned from a journey, he found that Fatima had decorated her doorway with a curtain and adorned her sons, Hassan and Hussein, with silver bracelets. Upon seeing this, the prophet chose not to enter the house.
Hmm. It's interesting that the prophet, known for his humility and simple lifestyle, was seemingly uncomfortable with this display of like wealth, even though it was within his own family.
It's a powerful image that speaks volumes about the prophet's values and priorities. He wasn't against adornment or beauty entirely, but he wanted to ensure that it was done in a way that aligned with Islamic principles. And in this instance, he felt that, the display was excessive.
And what's even more striking is Fatima's response. Realizing her father's discomfort, she immediately removed the curtain and the bracelets. She even cut off the bracelets to ensure they wouldn't be, worn again.
It shows her deep understanding of her father's teachings and her willingness to prioritize his guidance over, her own personal attachments to those possessions.
It's a beautiful example of the love and respect between a father and daughter and the way they both strive to embody the values of their faith.
And then we see the prophet's compassion and love for his family. After comforting his grandsons, he instructs Thaban to buy Fatima a necklace, an az, and 2 ivory bracelets.
I have to admit, I'm not familiar with the term "az." Could you explain what that is?
Of course, scholars differ on the exact meaning of az, but it's generally thought to be a type of headband or ornament worn on the head.
Okay, I see. So it's like a piece of jewelry that's meant to adorn the head.
Yeah.
And what about the ivory bracelets? Is there any like significance to the choice of ivory?
That's an excellent observation. Ivory was a precious material often associated with purity and elegance. Perhaps it was a way of acknowledging, Fatima's desire for beauty while also ensuring that it was expressed in a way that was both modest and meaningful.
So it's not about rejecting like beauty or adornment altogether, but about making sure it's done in a way that's balanced and aligned with Islamic values.
Precisely. The Prophet's actions show that it's not about, depriving ourselves of beautiful things, but about using them in a way that doesn't lead to excess or attachment.
This story is so rich with symbolism and meaning. It's making me reflect on my own relationship with material possessions and how easily we can become like attached to things that ultimately don't matter.
It's a reminder that true wealth lies in our connection with God, our families, and the good deeds we perform.
Okay, I think this story is a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive. We've explored the teachings on hair care, dyeing, adornment, and even the deeper spiritual implications of our choices. I'm eager to see what other insights we can uncover from these hadith.
Me too. Let's continue our journey and see where these teachings lead us.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Sunan Abu Dawud Hadith, Book 28, Combing the Hair. It feels like we've been on like this incredible journey through these teachings, uncovering so much wisdom in what initially seemed like, simple instructions about grooming and adornment.
It's been fascinating to see how these hadiths, they connect to such profound themes of, balance, simplicity, intention, and even social dynamics. It really highlights, the holistic nature of Islam and how every aspect of life, even our appearance, can be an opportunity for spiritual growth.
Yeah, what's been most striking to me is that it's not just about like following rules, but
Yeah.
understanding the deeper meaning behind those rules and applying them thoughtfully to our lives. It's like we're being given a framework for living a life that is both, beautiful and meaningful, both inwardly and outwardly.
You've articulated that beautifully. And it's a framework that encourages us to, think critically, to question our assumptions, and to consider different perspectives. It's not about, blind adherence, but about engaging with these teachings in a way that resonates with our own, unique circumstances.
As we've been discussing these hadiths, I've been thinking about how relevant they are to our like modern world, especially with all the pressures and influences we face around beauty and self-image. It's like we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us we need to look a certain way, buy certain products, and strive for an often unattainable standard of perfection.
That's such an important point. These teachings, they offer a counter narrative to the often, superficial and consumerist messages we encounter daily. They call us back to a more authentic and grounded way of being, where our worth isn't tied to, our appearance or possessions.
It's almost like a breath of fresh air amidst all the like noise and pressure.
Yeah.
These teachings remind us that true beauty comes from within, from our character, our actions, and our connection to the divine.
Exactly. They encourage us to cultivate inner qualities like, kindness, compassion, generosity, and humility, rather than, becoming fixated on external appearances.
And they remind us to, find contentment and gratitude for the blessings we have rather than, constantly striving for more or like comparing ourselves to others.
That's a really crucial point. In a world driven by, comparison and competition, these teachings, they offer a path to, inner peace and fulfillment.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's like one key takeaway that you hope our listeners will carry with them?
For me, it's the reminder that every action, no matter how small, can be an act of worship, an opportunity to, connect with the divine. Even something as simple as like combing our hair or choosing a perfume can be, infused with intention and meaning.
Oh, I love that. It's about, recognizing the sacredness of our bodies and treating them with respect and care. It's about aligning our outward actions with our inner values and striving for excellence in all that we do.
You've captured it perfectly. It's about seeing the world through a lens of gratitude and recognizing the beauty and wisdom in the teachings that have been, passed down to us.
This deep dive has definitely sparked a lot of like reflection and inspiration for me. It's given me a new perspective on the significance of personal grooming and how it can be a means of expressing our faith and connecting with something greater than ourselves.
I feel the same way. It's been an enriching journey, and I hope our listeners have found it equally, insightful and thought-provoking.
I'm sure they have. And remember, the insights we've shared are just a starting point. We encourage you to continue exploring these hadiths on your own, to delve deeper into their meanings and to find ways to integrate their wisdom into your daily lives.
Keep seeking knowledge, keep asking questions, and keep striving to embody the beauty and wisdom of these teachings. May your journey be filled with growth, understanding, and blessings.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into Sunan Abu Dawud Hadith, Book 28. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep seeking beauty in all its forms.